There comes a moment in every human life when you must confront the greatest limitation you will ever face. And it is not your environment, it is not your background, it is not your back-raised sources, and it is not even the opposition around you. It is the person you used to be that refuses to release its grip on who you are becoming, because the greatest enemy of your future is often the comfort of your past. And until you make a decision to outgrow your old version, you will remain trapped in a cycle of repetition, living a life that echoes yesterday instead of creating tomorrow. You were not designed to remain the same. Growth is not optional. It is the evidence of life. Everything that is alive grows, and anything that stops growing begins to decay. That means stagnation is not stability, it is slow destruction. Many people mistake familiarity for peace, but what they call peace is often just fear dressed in routine. You were not created to manage your limitations. You were created to expand beyond them, to stretch beyond what you have known, to become more than what you have known, to become more than what you have been told you are. But growth demands discomfort, and that is where most people retreat. They prefer the known pain of their current condition over the unknown challenge of transformation. Growth requires a conscious decision to release the person you used to be in order to fully step into the person you were designed to become. Because as long as you are emotionally attached to your past identity, your future will always be restricted by it. And many people struggle not because they lack opportunity or ability, but because they refuse to let go of habits, mindsets, and beliefs that no longer serve their next level. And this creates an internal conflict where they desire change but resist transformation. And you cannot become something new while holding on to something old. Because growth demands space, and that space is created by letting go. And letting go is not easy, because your old version feels familiar, it feels safe, it feels predictable, even if it is limiting. And that is why so many people remain stuck in cycles that they secretly want to escape, because they are more comfortable with what they know than committed to what they could become. But real growth begins the moment you value your future more than your past. The moment you decide that who you are becoming matters more than who you have been, and this requires honesty with yourself, because you must identify the parts of your life that are holding you back, whether it is your thinking patterns, your daily habits, your circle of influence, or even the way you see yourself. And once you identify them, you must be willing to release them without hesitation. Because partial commitment produces partial results, and you cannot negotiate with growth. You either embrace it fully or you remain where you are. And many people try to carry their old mindset into a new season and expect different results. But that is not transformation, that is repetition, because your life will always reflect your internal state. And if your thinking does not change, your results will not change. And this is why. Growth is first internal before it becomes external, because before your life changes, your mind must change. Before your environment shifts, your perspective must shift, and this is where the real work begins, in the unseen decisions you make daily, in the discipline you build when no one is watching, in the choices you make when it would be easier to fall back into old patterns, because your old version will always try to pull you back. It will remind you of your past failures, it will make you doubt your ability, it will tempt you with comfort, but you must understand that comfort is often the enemy of progress, because nothing grows in comfort. Everything that grows is stretched, challenged, and pushed beyond its limits. And if you want to grow, you must be willing to become uncomfortable. You must be willing to do what your old version avoided. You must be willing to think differently, act differently, and respond differently, even when it feels unnatural at first. Because growth is not about feeling ready. It is about being willing. And readiness comes through action, not before it. And every step you take away from your old self is a step toward your true potential. And this process requires patience, because transformation does not happen overnight. It is built over time through consistent effort, through repeated choices that align with your future rather than your past. And there will be moments where you feel like you are not making progress, where it seems like nothing is changing, but you must trust the process. Because growth is often invisible before it becomes visible. And just because you cannot see immediate results does not mean you are not evolving, it means you are in the process. And the process is necessary because it prepares you for the level you are stepping into. And as you continue to grow, you will begin to notice changes, not just in you, our circumstances, but in your mindset, in your confidence, in your discipline, and in the way you carry yourself. And these changes will confirm that you are no longer the same person, that you have outgrown your old version, which you have outgrown your old version. And this is where your life begins to shift in a powerful way. Because when you change, everything around you begins to respond to that change. New opportunities begin to appear. New connections begin to appear. New connections begin to open up. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because you did. And this is the power of growth. It transforms you from the inside out. And it positions you to live a life that reflects your true potential. But it all begins with one decision. The decision to let go of who you were so you can become who you were meant to be. And that decision must be made daily, because growth is not a one-time event. It is a continuous commitment to evolving beyond your past and stepping into your future with intention and purpose. Your mindset is the foundation upon which your entire life is built, because everything you experience on the outside is first created on the inside. And if your thinking is limited, your results will inevitably reflect those limitations. And many people attempt to change their circumstances without first changing their thoughts. Which leads to frustration, because external change without internal transformation is temporary. And this is why you must understand that your mind is not just a passive observer of life, it is an active creator of it, shaping your decisions, influencing your actions, and ultimately determining your outcomes. And if you do not take control of your thinking will take control of you, keeping you trapped in patterns that do not serve your growth. And one of the greatest barriers to success is not a lack of opportunity, but a mindset that cannot recognize or suss. Attain opportunity, because even when doors open, a limited mindset will hesitate, doubt, and sometimes even sabotage progress, not because it lacks ability, but because it lacks belief. And belief is powerful because it acts as a filter through which you interpret your experiences. Meaning two people can face the same situation and produce completely different results based solely on how they think about it. And this is why your perception matters. Because your perception shapes your reality. And if you perceive challenges as threats, you will avoid them. But if you perceive them as opportunities for growth, you will embrace them. And this shift in thinking is what separates those who remain stagnant from those who evolve, because growth requires a mindset that is willing to expand beyond comfort and familiarity, and you must intentionally train your mind to think differently, because your natural tendency is to default to what is familiar, to repeat thoughts you have been thinking for years. And those thoughts have created the life you are currently living, so if you want a different life, you must develop a different way of thinking. And this begins with awareness. Because you cannot change what you do not recognize, so you must observe your thoughts, identify patterns that limit you, and challenge beliefs that keep you small. And this process requires discipline, because your mind will resist change. It will try to convince you that your current way of thinking is sufficient, even when it is not producing the results you desire. But you must not accept every thought that comes into your mind as truth, because not all thoughts are accurate. Some are rooted in fear. Some are shaped by past experiences, and some are influenced by other people's opinions. And if you allow those thoughts to define you, you will never step into your full potential. So you must learn to take authority over your thinking, to replace limiting beliefs with empowering ones, to shift your focus from what is lacking to what is possible. And this does not mean ignoring reality. It means choosing a perspective that enables growth rather than restricts it. And as you begin to change your thinking, your actions will begin to change as well, because your behavior is a reflection of your mindset. And when you believe you are capable, you act with confidence. When you believe growth is possible, you take initiative. And when you believe you can overcome challenges, you persist through difficulties. And over time, these actions produce results that reinforce your new mindset, creating a cycle of growth and progress. And this is how transformation happens. Not through a single moment of inspiration, but through consistent mental discipline, through daily decisions to think in alignment with the life you want to create. And you must also be mindful of what you expose your mind to, because your environment influences your thinking, and if you constantly surround yourself with negativity, doubt, and limitation, it will shape your mindset accordingly. But if you intentionally seek out information, people, and experiences that inspire growth, your thinking will begin to expand, and you will start to see possibilities that you once overlooked. And this is why your circle matters. Your input matters. Your focus matters. because they all contribute to the development of your mindset. And as your mindset evolves, so does your capacity to achieve more, to handle more responsibility, to navigate challenges with resilience, and to pursue goals with clarity and determination. And you will begin to realize that the limits you once believed were real were actually self-imposed, created by a way of thinking that no longer serves you. And when you break free from those limitations, you win. You break free from those limitations, you give. Unlock a level of potential that was always within you, but never fully accessed. And this is the power of changing your mindset. It changes the way you see yourself, the way you approach life, and the way you respond to circumstances. And ultimately, it changes your results, because your life will always move in the direction of your dominant thoughts. So if you want to change your life, you must first change your thinking, and that is a responsibility that belongs to you, because no one else can do it for you. Because no one else can do it for you. No one else can think on your behalf. You must take ownership of your mind, develop it intentionally, and align it with the future you desire, because once your mindset shifts, everything else begins to follow, and what once seemed impossible begins to feel achievable. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Discipline and consistency are the essential bridge that connects your potential to your transformation, because no matter how gifted, talented, or inspired you may be, without disciplined action applied consistently over time, your potential will remain dormant, existing only as possibility rather than becoming reality. And many people misunderstand this truth because they are driven by motivation, which is temporary and emotional, rather than discipline, which is stable and intentional. And motivation may get you started, but it is discipline that keeps you going when the excitement fades, when the results are not immediate, and when the process becomes challenging. And this is where most people fall back into their old patterns. Not because they lacked vision, but because they lacked the structure to sustain it. And discipline is not about restriction. It is about alignment. It is the ability to organize your behavior in a way that reflects your goals rather than your feelings. Because if you only act when you only act when you feel like it, you will live inconsistent. And then inconsistency produces unstable results, but when you commit to discipline, you remove the dependency on emotions and replace it with intentional action. And this is what creates progress, because progress is not built on occasional effort. It is built on repeated actions that compound over time, and consistency is the force that multiplies the effect of your discipline. Because doing something once will not change your life, but doing it daily, even in small amounts, creates momentum. And momentum is powerful because it makes it easier to continue moving forward. And as you build this rhythm, your actions begin to feel more natural. Your habits begin to solidify, and your identity begins to shift. Because what you do consistently eventually becomes who you are. And this is why discipline is not just about achieving goals, it is about becoming a certain kind of person. A person who follows through, a person who honors commitments, a person who shows up regardless of circumstances. And this level of consistency requires a clear understanding of your priorities, because without clarity, your discipline will be scattered, and scattered effort leads to scattered results. So you must decide what truly matters, what aligns with your vision, and then focus your energy on those areas with intention and persistence. And this also means learning to say no to distractions. And this also means learning to say no to distractions. Because every time you say yes to something that does not align with your growth, you are indirectly saying no to your progress. And discipline often requires sacrifice. It requires choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort, choosing effort over ease, choosing growth over convenience. And while this may feel difficult in the moment, it is what separates those who achieve transformation from those who remain in cycles of stagnation. And you must also understand that discipline is developed, not inherited. It is built through practice, through repetition, through making decisions that align with your goals, even when it feels uncomfortable. And at first it may feel unnatural, it may feel forced, but over time, as you continue to apply yourself, it becomes part of your character, part of your daily routine, part of how you operate. And this is where consistency plays its role, because consistency reinforces discipline, it strengthens your commitment, it builds your confidence. And it proves to you that you are capable of following through. And as your confidence grows, so does your capacity to take on greater challenges, to pursue bigger goals, and to push beyond previous limits. And this is how transformation unfolds. Not through sudden breakthroughs, but through steady, disciplined effort applied consistently over time. And there will be days when you feel tired, when you feel unmotivated, when you question whether it is worth it. But those are the moments that define your growth, because anyone can act when it is easy, but transformation is reserved for those who act when it is difficult. And every time you choose to remain consistent in those moments, you reinforce a new standard for yourself, a standard that says you are committed, you are focused, and you are serious about your growth. And this standard becomes your foundation, guiding your actions, shaping your habits, and influencing your results. And over time, you will begin to see the impact of your discipline, not just in what you achieve, but in who you become, because you will become more resilient, more focused, more intentional, and more aligned with your purpose. And this is the true reward of discipline and consistency. Not just the external results, but the internal transformation, the development of a mindset and character that can sustain success, handle responsibility, and continue grow. And this is why discipline and consistency are not optional. If you desire transformation, they are essential. They are the bridge that takes you from where you are to where you want to be. And every step you take across that bridge is a step closer to realizing your full potential, but it requires commitment, it requires persistence, and it requires a willingness to show up every day, regardless of how you feel, because in the end, it is not what you do occasionally that defines your life. It is what you do consistently that shapes your future. Fear is often misunderstood as a signal to stop, but in reality, it is an indication that you are stepping beyond the boundaries of your comfort zone and entering a space where growth becomes possible. And many people allow fear to become a barrier simply because they misinterpret its presence, assuming that if something feels uncertain or uncomfortable, it must be wrong, when in fact uncertainty is the very environment where transformation takes place. And if you wait for fear to disappear before you take action, you will remain stuck in the same place, because fear does not vanish on its own. It is diminished through movement, through action, through the willingness to proceed, even when clarity is incomplete. And this is what separates those who grow from those who remain stagnant, because growth is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. And every individual who has ever achieved anything meaningful has encountered fear at some point. Not because they were incapable, but because they were expanding. And expansion always challenges what is familiar, it disrupts what is comfortable, and it demands a level of courage that goes beyond feelings. And courage is not something you wait to feel. It is something you choose to demonstrate. It is a deliberate response to fear that says you will not allow uncertainty to dictate your direction. And this choice is powerful because it shifts your relationship with fear. Instead of seeing it as an enemy, you begin to recognize it as a guide, pointing you toward areas where growth is required, where potential is waiting to be developed, and where your next level exists. And this perspective changes everything, because it transforms fear from a stopping point into a starting point. And when you begin to see fear this way, you stop avoiding challenges and start embracing them, understanding that every time you confront something that intimidates you, you are expanding your capacity, you are strengthening your confidence, and you are proving to yourself that you are capable of more than you previously believed. And this is how growth becomes a continuous process, because each time you overcome one level of fear, you prepare yourself to face the next, and your ability to handle uncertainty increases. Your resilience deepens, and your willingness to take risks becomes stronger. And this does not mean that fear will completely disappear. It means that it will no longer control you, it will no longer dictate your decisions, and it will no longer limit your progress. Because you have developed the mindset and discipline to act in alignment with your goals rather than your emotions. And this is critical because your emotions are temporary. They fluctuate based on circumstances, but your decisions shape your life. And if your decisions are based on fear, your life will be restricted by it. But if your decisions are based on purpose, your life will expand beyond it. And this requires self-awareness, because you must recognize when fear is influencing your thinking, when it is causing you to hesitate, when it is making you doubt your abilities. And once you recognize it, you must challenge it, not by denying its existence, but by refusing to give it authority. And this is done through action, through taking steps forward, even when you feel uncertain, through speaking even when your voice feels unsteady, through trying even when the outcome is not guaranteed, because each action you take weakens the power of fear and strengthens your confidence. And over time, you begin to build a new pattern, a pattern of responding to fear with courage, of choosing growth over comfort, of prioritizing progress over perfection. And this pattern becomes part of your identity, shaping how you approach challenges and how you navigate opportunities. And you begin to realize that fear was never the problem. It was simply a test of your willingness to grow, a signal that you were approaching something significant, something that required you to stretch beyond your current limits. And once you understand this, you stop running from fear and start using it as a tool, as a catalyst for development, as a reminder that you are moving in the right direction. Because staying in your comfort zone may feel safe, but it also keeps you confined. It keeps you operating at a level below your potential, and it prevents you from experiencing the fullness of what you are capable of achieving. And the only way to break out of that limitation is to face the very things that intimidate you, to step into situations that challenge you, and to trust that you will grow through the process. And this trust is essential because growth requires faith in your ability to adapt, to learn, and to overcome, even when the path is not fully clear. And as you continue to move forward, you will begin to see that what once felt impossible becomes manageable. What once seemed overwhelming becomes familiar, and what once triggered fear becomes a source of strength. And this is the transformation that occurs when you refuse to let fear be a barrier, when you choose to see it as a signal that you are evolving, that you are expanding, and that you are stepping into a greater version of yourself. And this realization empowers you to take control of your journey, to pursue your goals with boldness, and to live a life that is not dictated by limitations but defined by growth. And in the end, it is not the absence of fear that determines your success, it is your response to it. Because fear will always be present at the edge of expansion, but it is your willingness to move forward that determines whether you remain where you are or rise into who you are meant to become.